6 African nations, including Zimbabwe, South Africa and Botswana, are calling for the ivory trade to be made legal again. Leaders there say elephant poaching has actually surged since a ban came into effect in 1990. They also argue that despite the rise in illegal hunting, elephant populations have still risen and are causing problems for residential areas. Finally, those presidents point out that the decision to regulate ivory should be theirs to make and not international bodies or foreign governments. Well, let's go to London and speak with Barnaby Phillips. He's with the Elephant Protection Initiative, working for a sustainable future for Africa's elephants. Barnaby is also an ex-colleague of mine, so lovely to see your face again. Barnaby, good to have you on the Newsmakers. So this is a fascinating story, right? Because we have the international organizations on the one hand saying elephant conservation, and the leaders of these southern African countries saying elephant management. Are we going to find ourselves at a sticking point?
It's been stuck, Imran, this debate for decades, in truth. It's a little bit more complicated than just, say, Western conservation groups versus Southern Africa. The divisions are very deep within Africa itself. The 5 Southern African countries that want to resume ivory trading, in one sense they are in a strong position because the majority of Africa's surviving elephants live in those countries. On the other hand, they are very clearly within a minority of African elephant range states, of which there are still, even today, some 35, some 36. And the vast majority of countries in Eastern Africa, Central Africa and West Africa want the ivory trade moratorium to be maintained, for the ban to stay in place. And that's why the Southern African countries have consistently failed at meetings of the African Union to get the rest of the continent to go with them. And that, in part, is the cause of their frustration.
Right. And in the setup to you, we heard from Emmerson Mnangagwa. In addition to him, Botswana's president saying we cannot continue to be spectators while others debate and take decisions about our elephants. Namibia's president saying, I listened this morning to all experts lecturing us, and I wanted to ask where they come from. If they are from Europe or the US, I wanted to ask them how they destroyed all their elephants, but come to lecture us. So this is a very political issue, and it's a very sensitive issue for a lot of them. They feel, these Southern African nations feel, that the conservationists don't understand the context within which they have to live and operate. Are you partial to that argument?
I have a lot of sympathy with that argument, yes. And I think it's a bit rich, frankly, for people who come from a country like Britain, where we wiped out our own large, dangerous mammals, wolves and bears back in the Middle Ages, to be too moralistic or sanctimonious about this. And I think people in the West have to understand that living alongside elephants, say in a country like Botswana, is not always easy. Elephants make difficult neighbours. They destroy crops, they destroy fences, they destroy water installations. Sometimes they kill people. And I think people who are in that front line of that human-elephant conflict, which is not unique to Southern Africa, it's happening across Africa as not so much elephant populations growing, although they are growing locally in a few places. The overall trend is downwards, but above all, of course, human populations are growing very dramatically in Africa. And so, yes, I have some sympathy for that. But on the other hand, these Southern African countries have to look at the larger political context. Who exactly do they intend to sell their ivory to? The overall demand for ivory, legal and illegal, over the past 2 decades or so, has come from China. Well, China implemented a comprehensive ban on ivory back at the beginning of 2018. So it's not quite clear where those stocks of, say, Botswanan or Zimbabwean or Zambian ivory are going to go. Are they going to try and prevail on other countries to withdraw from CITES? That's the international convention which monitors international trade. Well, you know, that comes with all sorts of international reputation issues, all sorts of consequences. And I was in Kasane at that summit in northern Botswana, Imran, and for all the heat and the anger, which undoubtedly is genuine, I sensed that Southern African countries were not ready to take as drastic a step as that.
What is the compromise, if there is to be one? Do you crack down on illegal poaching but find other ways to legalize it in some way? Tell me how this comes unstuck.
One of the issues is hunting, and allowing safari hunting of elephants, which is not the same and shouldn't be confused as the ivory trade. So in particular, that has been the model of conservation in South Africa, in Namibia, in Zambia, in Zimbabwe, also incidentally in countries like Tanzania, which is anti the ivory trade. And Botswana is very much on the fence here, and that's where a lot of the interest is. I mean, just a bit of context for viewers. Botswana has perhaps 150,000 elephants, maybe more. There are only perhaps just over 400,000 elephants left in sub-Saharan Africa. So you can see just politically, in elephant terms, Botswana is a giant. Botswana rather abruptly ended safari hunting in 2013, 2014 under the previous president, Ian Khama. And President Masisi, the current president, is under enormous pressure to bring it back. And I got the clear impression in Botswana last week that that is the direction in which Botswana will be going. And so what happens there is that a person, say from America, Germany, Italy, the Middle East, wherever, goes to a country like Botswana and spends, in some cases, tens of thousands of dollars for the right to shoot an elephant. Now, you and I may find that distasteful, may not find that anyone's idea of fun, but if somebody is prepared to spend that money, and if elephants are well protected and it's done in a sustainable, legal, corrupt-free way, and crucially, if the benefits accrue to those communities who we were talking about at the beginning, the people who live around elephants, well, then you can see that there is a conservation model there that could work and that could be a win-win model. But it's a very emotive issue, as you'd imagine.
Right. And is there a conversation happening between the decision makers at CITES, people from organizations such as your own, and these Southern African nations? Are you guys talking to each other?
Yes, we're in dialogue all the time. Botswana is an Elephant Protection Initiative member. That's the organization I work for. So too is Angola, by the way, who were at that meeting in Kasane. And it's very interesting when you see a country like Angola interacting with Botswana, its neighbor, and they're just in completely different places. I mean, they understood each other, and it was very diplomatic, but it highlighted the very different status, if you like, of the elephant, of conservation and of politics in African countries. There are very few elephants left in Angola because of the decades of civil war. Botswana would love Angola to become again a peaceful tourist country and for lots of its elephants to migrate back into southeastern Angola. It sounds a bit fanciful, but in theory it could alleviate some of the pressure in northern Botswana. But when you see just how differently the perspectives are of a country like Angola to its southern African neighbours, when you see how differently a country like Kenya, which is firmly anti-hunting, firmly anti the ivory trade, and which has based its economic conservation model on photographic tourism, these intra-African difficulties run deep. Of course, tragically, the big CITES conference that was due to take place in Sri Lanka later this month was cancelled following the attacks there some 3 weeks ago. So things haven't quite come to a head. We expect that meeting may take place towards the end of this year, 2019.
Okay, we'll be watching closely, and when that happens, and if there are any developments, we'll come calling again. Barnaby, great to talk to you. Barnaby Phillips joining us there.